Hello, my dear friends of the Creator itself. You know, on a technological level where we are separated, it feels like the joy is also separated, from which I can see how you are reacting to what I am saying. In the future this may be able to work, but I just have to remain unattached to however you react, and hope that perhaps some people may be able to find use of it. Anyhow, dear ones, today I don't know what I want to talk about. And I do sense there may be some assistance for a teaching to be given where there is preparation. I feel right now that need is not so much prevalent in me. So if you excuse this factor, that may make this much more bearable. So a simple observation of this world of which we live in, where people have been programmed to not feel that they have something in common with someone else, to make them feel that they cannot cooperatively love each other unless there's a relationship, or if there's a history of an occurrence that made it okay to love another person. There is a lot of, as I have talked about before, encrusted nature in societies today, all having a unique aspect to the nation and continent, but everyone shares a collective type of duality that goes into our daily interactions, where we do not further to engage at a level at which most people will call uncomfortable, inappropriate, and inhumane, because we don't want to push into people's personal lives. We don't want to make them feel harassed. We don't want to, give them that uncomfortable feeling of breaking out of a barrier that perhaps years upon decades have been designed to actually stifle a perception to think that growing is death. It is it's an impediment. I think I'm using that word right? And so you feel that death consciousness when you're around people, that unwillingness to let go of the old, let go of what they have been told as absolute. And so there is a very subtle game being played amongst the world, whereby no one is really talking, no one is really discussing that which is growth, personal and humane growth. And unless there is that type of growth, there will be death, as what they do not really wish to see as truth, covering over their choices, covering over their momentary decisions to accept the beliefs that they are told from younger age. That no, you won't die, just keep focusing on the pleasures. Keep focusing on getting that successful degree. Keep getting that whatever it is for you. To not, I don't know what I really wish to say here, but break open people's identity, or shall I say, illusions. And as I've been reading this book recently that I told in the previous video, one of the main quotations was, every human being is having a subjective experience. All struggles upon this planet are caused because of people forcing their subjective experience as the universal experience upon others through deceit and, again, force. And this subjective experience can actually be transcended when we realize that our four-body system can only contain that which is in this world. Those of us who realize and look up at the stars that we are more than what we've been told, identifying with a beyond infinite capacity, we may be able to tap into an experience, a type of consciousness that isn't necessarily subjective to the core within every individual. And so what you have today is people so intimately and intensely believing in this subjective experience is only subjective forever, that there is no universal perspective. And there's a fine line between force and passive. I've talked about this before. And distinguishing that balance in the workplace can feel like, 1, you may get fired, 2, other people won't like you, and 3, you may not have any friends at the end of the day, with no compliments. All is very much true. But yet, as time continues to goes on, without the conversations and the awareness of these new experiences of how we can be connected to God, that we are God, and that perhaps if we are, everything around this world, everything in this world can change. For with man, nothing is possible. But for with God, I smile. My dear beloved friends, I know you may have some interest in certain areas of life, and some of you have gone to the point where your business, your job or employment is actually situated in this focus. But I have to tell you right now that many of these focuses have denied an openness to be able to bring forth conversations. You see, we human beings, we absolutely love and grow from our ability to interact. And if we close ourselves off from experiencing this interaction between other people that has a capability, if we are willing to be more than what we've ever had before, we can help every part of society. Doesn't matter what. And it's through the experience of having this realization that we are more than what we have been told, that gives us permission to have the light of our I Am presence come through and attune to the ideas that are waiting to be brought forth, that are in the Ascended Master octave. And this is an octave that is beyond the 4 planes of Earth. And scientists shout at me right now that there is no realm beyond the physical. Nevertheless, I tell you that there is. There are many realms. And these 4 realms of which the Earth works upon, that corresponds to our 4-body system, the physical, the emotional, the mental, the identification level. There are matrices, patterns, and blueprints that are lowered by the Ascended Masters that become open to people when they begin to accept and realize that the core of connecting with people is also the core of transcending with people. To be able to be in that state where it's not just the same old, where it's that familiar conversation, it's that familiar experience, it's that familiar pattern, where in most cases in the youth today it is to have us not think and feel, where we dilute our 4 bodies with various forms of drugs and alcohol and entertainment that really evaporate the creative instincts that are born in us. It is all true, beloved. And we can make such a great difference by studying some of these things that the Ascended Masters are bringing through. And we can choose to be a vessel for them, as long as we are willing to be in this state of understanding that, one, we're always connected to everyone on earth and every single being in the universe, and 2, the sense of connection comes from something that is always beyond what we can experience with our ideas and emotions. And it's not necessarily the ideas and emotions that guarantee the experience. They can just so as be a catalyst or a tool that prepares you to have that direct experience to the connection of all living creatures. And that takes willingness and bravery to question every day our thought pattern, our thought system, of our motives and ways of what we're here to do. If it's really to spend all of our time and energy focusing on the pleasures of happiness that is distinguished by entertainment and materialism as a religion. People laugh and scoff at religion as something that is abusive and has no point. But look at materialism now. What is the point? When you're just endlessly going around and having the same experience that really wants the individual seeking more and more of the same thing, instead of having more and more of a different thing. That does not have to be abusive. That could be loving. My dear beloveds, we each have a divine plan, and although we may not know the specifics, more of the specifics we can know. And it's not like you're going to miss the point, you're going to miss the opportunity or the time of when you can or cannot do something, because there are actually different potentials we all have to manifesting our divine plan in different ways. There are low, medium, and high potentials for each of us to developing and practicing what we wanted to do. And some of us who are known as avatars, who are the most spiritual people, have come precisely to not just learn to not react to people and to the programming of the fallen ones, or in other words, those people of the power elite who are using their great sophistication of attainment, of spiritual cognition, for their own desire to prove God wrong, that He gave us free will, and or to just mere wage total and absolute destruction. Both are meaningless attempts to really live life in a continuance of new experiences that have a connection to all people and things. My beloved ones, the divine plan is beautiful. A song that captures the beauty of it is called Jake's First Flight. It's in the movie Avatar. And when that coronation of multiple singing of this melody takes place, it is a soul-shattering experience to understand the pure awareness of how loving God is for itself, as many individualizations as itself, extensions to just play with the beloved, as the divine lover experiences a figure eight or a receiving action from the beloved. To know, once it knows itself after separation, we are also the beloved, because the beloved only knows itself as the divine lover. But the divine plan for each of us may seem very hard in our workplace, in our family, in our friends, and this is something that many people will reject. There's much opposition right now on this earth. There are force fields in the atmosphere and people's beings, but it's primarily in the atmosphere over especially cities and places where there has been a great abuse, such as in war, where there are collective entities or formulations of the mass consciousness built up as black clouds that are consistently sucking out the life energy and giving only little spurts of psychic energy to push people, to try to make people delve their way into the consciousness of this beast, of this matrix, which is created by the fallen ones primarily, with the specificity of all the precise inhumane concepts that are in it. But really, it was the original inhabitants of Earth that allowed them to come here, because they decided, it was gradual, but after the third root race, to live more and more in the comforts of life, in the uncomfortability of constantly transcending what we know as life. Always having that equilibrium of balance, where we know the push and pulls of the yin and yang are both needed simultaneously, constantly, throughout our days, that give us the transcendence and also the perfection of who we are. That the transcendence says, you are not perfect, while the perfection says you are whole, merging into a state of progression that knows itself as perfect, but also transcending always, higher, redefining perfection, redefining transcendence as something that is not abusive or to put down in inferiority or superiority complex. It's hard to explain in words for me, and even perhaps for you it may be hard as I'm trying to adapt it to you. Oh man. But my main point is throughout our days we have to find this balance, and it comes in many ways of connecting with the ascended host and people at the same time. And this is what I'm trying to do with the most spiritual people. As I have just taken a break, you can say, from the general population, I have decided that it is it is important and even perhaps needed to build a foundation for the most spiritual people that can perhaps find an example through me, which is not just me. It is more than me. Nevertheless, as co-creators we are, I want to say, to be at peace, to remember your connection to all living creatures. And if you get lost in the senses of desiring a relationship, of meeting those very insatiable extremes that give you the feeling of immediate happiness, that the choice is yours, that neither you or the decision to do so will make any part of this world against you in the way and means of a platform for abuse, rather than a platform, a schoolroom of earth as a way for growth. Seeing that each decision we make, each desire and complex obstacle we face is just a lesson to understand what really we do together as a society. Because it's not just us when we're feeling what we're feeling. It is many people. But it is our decisions individually that also contribute to why we feel, to what people feel. And we can lessen these intensities of these beasts, these demons, in the collective consciousness, where these black clouds of energy will not want to make us into puppets, giving forth our every thought and feeling and word and deed to a state that seeks no end through the pleasures of lust and you name it. There are many rounds of this in this day and age, especially in developed countries. And the Golden Age vision has been prepared through Saint Germain. He has given many visions, and he's written a book through various messengers, and I do have to say once again that Kim Michaels has recently released a new one, whereby it is much more advanced than anything that has been released before. And it was this past year that it came through. And with this, I am going to go into more detail as to how we can, in our businesses, how in our invocations and calls, and our discussions with our people, with the people, we can really take a new level to the collective state of consciousness. For when the 10% and the most spiritual people rise up above their mental boxes, accepting that there is always more, accepting that it is through the direct experience of more, not determined by our physical senses, that we can achieve this connection that is the virtue for experiencing ourselves as the one who came here out of sincere and pure volunteerism, that we wanted to know the value of truly connection after being separated. which is something that you cannot have unless you are separated. And one can say, why would God want to feel separated to bring more value to himself? Why would God even need more value to himself? God doesn't. But God loves diversity in experiences. He loves, and remember, it's not even just a he. God is an androgynous, perfect balance of the masculine and feminine elements. And God, this one, will work through all businesses in this world. If the most spiritual people rise up to be able to make certain calls into the Ascended Master's octave for the binding of our own egos and of these beasts, of the fallen ones, for them to be taken out of this world, which Archangel Michael will do, and other bands of angels and archangels. There are many different beings who are trying to help this earth right now. And although it could seem totally contradictory what I'm saying, because we have no real connection with them through media or science or whatever, per se, those who know in their heart the true experience of connection to all beings will understand that the ideas that come in the form of inventions and leaders like Martin Luther King delivering a speech to really enliven the collective experience that there can be a way to live in a way that is humane, I think really does prove, to myself at least, that there is something beyond the ordinary from each one of us and from this world. And as there have been many messengers in the past, it is not to get it. I'll finish with this. As there have been many messengers of the past, there have been a lot of dictations where there have been precise words that have been able to be lowered at the level of which the messenger's consciousness is at. And they are trying to do the same with me as with you right now, in this very moment. And it's all dependent upon our choices to really work with people. And they have said over and over that it's not a really thankful job to really be the Christ, to be the stance for truth when there is untruth. But there's a transformation in ourselves where we experience the receiving of what we give. And it is the most beautiful thing that I think it takes a lot of time. As for myself, I think will take a bit of time as we and I continue to participate in taking these stances. For I participated in a weekly experiment. It's a little over a week. I experimented with just going out and talking to random people and just being who I will be, sharing about this connection we all have, not in the highest sense of talking about ascended masters, because most people are not able to receive it, but there are some, and that is why I'm talking. That is why I think we have a potential to do so much. And I will not stop so long as I am here on this earth. And I can understand from you that there's a relative understanding of what you know is not so in alignment in the structures of society. Education being very force-based, abstract to what people can do in the world, whereas colleges, it gets into that, but the first 18 years of your life, it's pretty damn abstract, I would say. And creating an environment that seems so far off because of the government's decisions on many standpoints, assuming that it can't turn back on its actions, is false. Because there's something called the Immaculate Concept. And this is something that Mother Mary, 2,000 years ago, did on behalf of one of the incarnations of another individual. And she held this idea of his life being fulfilled in a way that brought connection and transcendence, where he would not be scared to take that stand for truth in the midst of many, many, many people around him in cities where these black clouds would hang over, to get him to submit to some absolute group of beings who are very stern to say, that is the wrong way, you get out of here or else we're going to kill you. That wasn't said per se like that, but that's how it happened, in a way. And education right now is manipulating millions and billions of people, children. Yes, innocent, but they are also incarnations from many past lives by the choices they have made that have kept them in re-embodiment, which has bound them through the religions of materialism and fanaticism and absolutism as the primary goals that have destroyed many people's souls, fragmented them. And we can return these fragments, or we can heal these broken parts of our four-body system as we learn to co-create conversations that can allow people to understand the universal connection we all have. That is one primary ingredient that is truly necessary for people to undergo rapid healing. The healing that allows one to feel that effulgence, that there is so much more to life than what's been told to them by religions, by science and politics, and the parents that have innocently tried to do what they know best, but simply it is not the best for an individual to experience itself as an individual with rights that are all inclusive to every man, woman, and child. For once governments relinquish this hold upon many of the educational platforms, it'll allow a lot more of an expansion of what the children are going through today. So they will not have to go through the psychological disorders when they are adults, and embrace that creativity that is just the purpose of our every moment. And that's why we are here, to make certain calls and to participate in certain actions wherever we may be. That is why. And that is my experience. For all of us, if you so wish to understand that this possibility can be something for you to accept, if you wish to accept that there is more than what you have experienced. For the world does and does not need change. And why I say this is because every lesson that each individual has to go through is precisely based upon a perfect balance that does not require a force so much based, and neither a passive so-called based, where neither individual takes the stand to pursue further development. And this perfect balance that we can coagulate must be bred by the avatars, the spiritual people. And we will feel more and more oneness and connectivity to every single living, breathing thing in the universe, the more we allow ourselves to die, to speak to that person over there and say that thing about, what we've been told, I don't really sense has been my experience, because every time that happens, I feel that there is a intrinsic life to have in a conversation with someone that everyone judges to be false because they think that everyone does not have that capability. It's a state of confidence that first must be trialed through faith, that out of your mouth may come words of a higher power that distinguishes that the true potential that is within you is truly there. And it takes that willingness to be wrong, so to speak, according to a standard only put by someone trying to make you think lesser or greater degrees of yourself in comparison to others. And these standards are everywhere. And these standards make people, or I guess push people, to feel like they can't have these conversations. To refrain from mumbling their words or stuttering their words or putting out of place certain words. And it feels like life and death in the moment, because if you don't do it right, you will be judged and condemned and ridiculed and all these things that in the moment may hurt a bit because we're not used to it, and the programming is very deeply ingrained that we are not worthy individuals to receive love. If a so-called being in this universe is denying the allowance of us being who we will be at any moment in time, my beloveds, strength, courage, and the calls are needed for us to help us understand the work that is needed in between the ascended hosts, who have the power that do not have the authority, where we have the authority but do not have the power. And it's a combined effort of invocation being redefined over and over. That's not just through spoken words to the ascended masters, but it's something more. It's something that can't even be defined. It is a process that we understand ourselves as a son that must kind of die, believing as we have believed in our ego over many years, millennia, and ancient records that have deeply ingrained into the subconscious collective psyche that is also part of us in a way, unless we have chosen many decisions in this lifetime to really show and prove to others the ordinary way to live, that we will undergo many trials, but we may go through them very quick. For every day, there are many experiences that many of us have. And as I participate in this week experiment, it got easier and easier, and it still is hard. I still have fear, talking to, big muscly guys, and I have a fear of talking to the employees there because I've been asked to leave more than once. A certain store that I like to use is Home Depot. There's lots of people there, always new people. I mean, there's some people that are the same, and it's usually employees, and they remember me kind of. But, I'm the type of person that likes to push the boundaries, and not just myself. And that's part of how I feel connection to this world, is in a way where I do not become attached to how people are, but giving that state of reference that there is more, only allows for a kind of force to take place inside of people that may seem very forceful, as my tone and as my expressions can be. It is who I am. And I think it is who we are to the core of our individual selves, as we know deep down what happens to a society and a civilization when we stop this nonsense. Excuse me, when we don't stop this nonsense. And so, my beloved ones, There's much work to do, and I'm not asking you to get so caught up in this divine plan of making people wake up, of getting to that highest level of consciousness. For no, it is a gradual, and it's a joyful process, and it's not that you have to feel joy. It's just a process where you take moment by moment with the grace of what you know. And with what you know, and perhaps with what I have said, we can come together to realize that there is an experience that is beyond what we know. And that is an experience that takes us to a connection to the oneness of all life. I want to let you know that all these things that I've been saying, I haven't really been thinking about them. Yes, it comes through my mind, and as they're spoken, I understand. Like I can understand the kind of reference and subject I'm talking about and how I want to go about it, but you let your mouth open from a selfless perspective to bring forth a connection to others. You undergo and the flow of God, the flow of the river of life, where it's just words of beauty and it's words of intricate meaning that is not so sophisticated to keep and memorize and analyze and interpret in a way that must be known by all people, where it's got to grab your attention. My beloved ones, it is a very subtle process that takes time and it takes healing. And some of this healing for us may come through helping others. Some of us really need to understand the psyche of these traumas that we have first had in our first embodiment, that come not from this retrogression, past lives, but more so understanding our fears that we have right now. Perhaps just taking one at a time and balancing it with exercises of invocation, of looking at it, affirming that you're more than it. Looking at it and affirming that you're more than it. Looking at it and perhaps explaining to people a way that is more than it. Making decisions to not focus your attention so much upon it. Because that is a part of the path. That you may not understand it, but you have the decision to not focus upon it. And that very trauma will make you think that you have to focus on it in order to live and survive and do all these things to have you have a successful life. This perpetual pattern of separation. And many masters have come through, have stepped forward, especially with the help of Kim, Jesus, Saint Germain, Mary, and Archangel Michael. Many, many, many more. And the Elohim are here. The Elohim are the creators of Earth, and they create planets around this world for others to learn lessons about the process of duality and the oneness of life. And they're very sophisticated beings who are at a much greater level than what part of the hierarchy of Earth is, as far as the sophisticated level of consciousness that can interpret the wavelength or the vibration frequency, that when we call forth their help, or even if we make that call in the formation of helping another individual, we can undergo a process of rapid healing. This healing is detrimental for the spiritual people to understand themselves as something more than what they have been told. We're all dying to really receive it. And the organs in our bodies, and our emotions, and our thought patterns will continue to die each day as we refuse to submit. Not in a force-based way, but in a way that is unconditionally loving, that meets people where they are, that doesn't force them to believe in the highest concept, or it doesn't even feel like it has to go to the bottom, or you have to do all the work to get them to see. For they have a responsibility to know Christ, to know God in themselves, and they have the potential to go higher and meet you higher. It may not be much, and for each person it will be different. You are not responsible for the awakening of this planet, but you are able for part of the ability you are able to respond to the awakening of part of the awakening of the earth. and you could say the whole. My beloveds, friends, and my family, we are one. 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 Feel it, know it, be it, and exuberate it wherever you go. For it will only transform every single pattern in your life that you have felt so incongruently distanted from the life source that breeds gratitude. For gratitude is a firm virtue that may carry us further, but we also need to forgive. And although in the grand scheme there is no right or wrong, forgiveness is a stepping stone that may allow us to breathe in what free will allows us to do, to experience the lessons in a grand scheme that may take many planets for us to understand these things, of what it means to kill millions upon millions of people as a power elite Illuminati member. And this is all acceptable in the eyes of giving the kingdom to the extensions of the Creator, which are the co-creators. And everyone is limited to how much we can go through the duality and force that duality upon others, but there's a long time. And precisely it is a long time because there are the individuals who have gone through that thickness and have come out on the other side and have used that great immensity of separation to have that such sincere compassion for other individuals on other planets who are going through the same thing, and they say, I will help you. I will go to their planet and sustain the momentum that gives people the ideas that there is a way around war, there is a way around poverty, there is a way around the division that thinks no one can communicate to each other unless they have the similar ideas. Nay, I will go, and we may be this one for when we ascend from this world to help others in the same circumstance. Operating from a higher level of service, of course, where our awareness is merged with this I am presence that has something that we cannot even comprehend. It is a beauty to behold. And I thank you for listening, my beloved ones. I thank you, because there is so much we can do together. And if you are still listening right now, you know the call, you know the help that I need and so many of us need to work together, to flourish businesses and small businesses into an open-ended model that allows profit to be redefined into a promise of empathy and constructivity that is divine, that is bringing forth principles that maybe some religions have taken on, but how is that a wrong thing if it doesn't confine God to someone who is angry and conditional, and that if you only do certain rituals, then we will love you, or God will love you. A reformation is taking place, and this is the revolution of the age of Aquarius, in which Saint Germain is the hierarch, and call to him. But there are many more, and I have named some sources that maybe will help you. But for right now, this is the play that we have, and I thank you for being in this theater, whereby we can take off some of our costumes that we've had, where we felt like we couldn't take them off because we had to be right. We had to, we didn't have the strength to show that there was another way to victimhood. Nevertheless, perhaps we may have a greater experience that we are more than this play has ever been and forever will be. I am more than anything in this world, and I am perfect to allow this more to be here and now, forevermore, as I always have been and will be.